I'm not Cole. I'm the CEO of a company called Strive.
Okay.
And obviously we're here at a Bitcoin mining conference. And for those that don't know Strive, we're both an asset manager and a wealth manager. An asset management firm founded in 2022 by Vivek Ramaswamy. Obviously ran for president. He's now running for governor of Ohio. And Strive was founded with a core mission to unapologetically pursue capitalism, innovation, meritocracy, all these fundamental core principles that have made America and American equities the best performing equities in the world for the last 40 plus years. We saw that as at risk. And so that first started in pushing back really hard against ESG, against DEI, things that were constraining the returns of corporations, and they were constraining themselves beyond the law. And if you just use a very simple sports analogy, you would never, if there's a rule to win a game, you would never constrain yourselves artificially and hold back from winning. You would pursue your mission unapologetically. So our view on that is that it's largely won. And anyways, I became the CEO of the company when Vivek stepped down to run for president. I was part of the day one team. I'm a longtime Bitcoin.
Very nice.
I have background in fixed income markets. Used to run portfolio for CalPERS, about $70 billion. Treasuries, and anyways, saw the problem of the U.S. debt, of the printing of money, and eventually became a massive Bitcoiner there. And so for Strive, as we kind of winning this ESG and DEI battle, we viewed that our next battle to be corporate Bitcoin adoption. And so it wasn't just an argument that Bitcoin's going to go to the moon, although we're hyper bullish on Bitcoin and I think it's going to go to the moon. The argument is actually founded in the material risk that exists for most corporations today because of the AI revolution, where the business moats of most companies are at risk. If you're a technology company, even if you invest heavily in AI, when you enter an era of exponential innovation, you don't know if you're going to be a winner on the back end. You look at the S&P 500 companies before the internet boom and after the internet boom, substantial change. And so if you're a company and you see a period of upcoming substantial change, you should want more capital, a larger balance sheet to prepare for that risk. This is not even an argument for Bitcoin. But then if you think about having a larger balance sheet, our view is that there's only one savings asset in the world right now, and that's Bitcoin. Bitcoin reintroduced a savings asset that, unlike U.S. Treasuries, which have a negative real rate of return, they lose purchasing power even though they give you interest every single year. Bitcoin is, in our view, likely to continue to appreciate in a way that makes for a great asset to save in for the long run. So that's the argument for profitable companies like that, maybe like a Microsoft or a Google, someone like that. And then for zombie companies or meme stocks, so we actually sent a letter a month ago to GameStop, really pushing them to buy Bitcoin, but not just to buy Bitcoin, to like go all in. And so even more all in than they've even announced.
Was it on their radar before your letter?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So it was on their radar. Our concern, so we own GameStop in 3 of our ETFs. And so we're a long-term investor of GameStop. Like they're passive ETFs. So no matter what GameStop does, as long as they meet the rules of the ETF, our clients are owners of GameStop. And if they do well, they're going to be even larger owners of GameStop, right? Because then they're going to have a larger weighting in these passive indexes. Right. So we're thinking about how does GameStop as a company that loses money, and I get that their balance sheet shows profitability, but if you actually unpack that, here's what happened. They had a bunch of unprofitable stores that were losing, X% per dollar sold. They closed down a bunch of stores. They still lose X% per dollar sold, but now they have a bunch of cash because they've sold, and then they get interest on that cash, and that interest offsets the losses. There's no sustainable business. And so our view was that, yes, they might buy Bitcoin, but there was concern that they might buy more cryptocurrencies beyond Bitcoin, which we thought would be a mistake, that Bitcoin's the only savings vehicle. And then also a concern that still exists to this day, that they may not go all in, like shut down your unprofitable stores that don't have a future. Don't just buy, and I think they're actually going to buy a lot of Bitcoin. I mean, the fact that they did this convertible bond. I mean, I think Saylor yesterday did a poll, like how much Bitcoin should GameStop buy? Like, should they be like a micro strategy or strategy of like 250 million? And his highest option was 3 billion. And I retweeted that and I said, I think at least 6 billion actually. And the reason being is they have, almost $5 billion of cash. They have the ability, because their stock is highly volatile, highly traded, to raise additional cash. And so, I mean, this company could easily own way more than 6 billion. But I just said, if they're not doing at least 6 billion, I kind of viewed it as a LARP. Like,
And so the 1.3 that they've committed to in convertible debt as of yesterday is just the starting ground, and
it should be just a starting.
I'm opposed.
There's no way they're gonna, they're not gonna buy $10 billion of Bitcoin overnight, even if that's the direction they go. I think what this signals to me is they're looking to do it in a major way, which I think is really promising. And I don't think that was a foregone conclusion. And you look at, just as an example, when we sent this letter to GameStop, it was really interesting to me because the Reddit community that's like major owners of GameStop, right? They many of them hated the letter, and they've also not taken fondly to GameStop's announcement. They're not all Bitcoiners, and they have different, they put their money where their mouth is with a very large investment in GameStop, right? And that was kind of a surprise to me. But for us as a long-term investor, we have to take our unapologetic view of the best way to position GameStop for long-run success, which is buy a ton of Bitcoin.
It's kind of interesting because you think investors in GameStop would be tech oriented, and then they would be Bitcoin oriented. But maybe the investors in GameStop aren't actually tech oriented, and they're more just stock buyers and sellers who aren't interested necessarily in the company, but were just interested in making money at the time.
I think there could be that. There could be, I would just rather buy Bitcoin myself and have Bitcoin and have GameStop.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some optimism of amongst that community of GameStop turning around their brick and mortar stores by doing various things, like it might be sell sports merchandise as well. And I take the other side of that in a major way. I think these brick and mortar stores are losers and are overhangs on their company, and so to me, it's just like we sent that letter to open the Overton window for Ryan Cohen and say, hey, yes, there's other stakeholders that have a different opinion. Here's our opinion. And hopefully we can help move them further in the direction that they would have already gone. Because imagine if GameStop would have bought $250 million of Bitcoin. Their company's worth billions and billions of dollars. They have almost $5 billion of cash. They could raise way more, and they buy a little bit amount of Bitcoin. Like, to me, like that's a stock you should short. I wouldn't ever short GameStop because of but from like a fundamental basis, that's a stock that has no future and hasn't actually transformed itself through Bitcoin ownership.
Are there any other companies that you're maybe sending some letters to that you can disclose?
I can't disclose, but yes, yeah, we are. There's another company that we're working on right now that should be public in the near future, and our strategy on these letters is very, very rarely going to be just randomly send a letter of a company that we think will buy Bitcoin. There's going to be a deeper strategy behind it than just that. So to make it very strategic and with a chance and a decent chance to actually drive an impact in a direction to help this company adopt Bitcoin or adopt it in a bigger way or convince other stakeholders on whether it's their other shareholders or their board members on why, because ultimately that's the hardest part. Like, think about a company, like any public company in America, you have over 10 people if you combine the C-suite and the board. Any public company, of those 10 people, you probably have at a minimum one Bitcoin, like just by chance, right? Like, and if you have at least one Bitcoiner that's interested in this and they're the minority, then a company like Strive as a shareholder can be helpful to drive activism as a long-term shareholder. People like the Twitter community, online communities can be helpful as customers and as people that are passionate. People like Saylor, obviously, just as godfather of Bitcoin treasury companies, can be helpful, right? It's all angles, right? And playing our part in to quote David Bailey, you can meme things into reality, like you really can. And we learned that like when we started fighting against ESG and DEI, like in 2022, that fight was not like it was not a foregone conclusion that America was going to go this direction. In fact, actually, we were told we were backwards looking, like there's no chance. Like, why are you guys even fighting this? And look where the country is now. And I think the same thing can and will happen with Bitcoin, but it's not just by chance. It's by work and people, beaming it into reality.
What is the biggest impetus that you're running into, or something that holds people back on these boards who are making a decision? Is it just that there's only 1 out of 10 people on the boards who actually intimately knows Bitcoin, or is it something larger?
That's the largest reason is the lack of education around Bitcoin. And that's true whether you're talking about corporate boardrooms, institutional pension adoption, that you start talking to very intelligent, very successful people that have never done the work to even understand Bitcoin. Like how
the time to
they don't have the time, they don't have the interest, they've continued to think it's a scam. And like a lot of them have, and this is true with my own journey when I got into Bitcoin at first, where I was an institutional portfolio manager managing billions and billions of dollars. And then I learned about Bitcoin on a bodybuilding floor. And so like in a way that I say is like from a place of ego, not humility. It was hard for me to accept that these bodybuilders were investing in a solution that I as an institutional investor wouldn't see. That takes humility to accept that. And as Bitcoin's now at 100K and all these, everyday people have made a ton of money by seeing the problem before the institutions, you got to take some humble pie. And I think that's a challenge for boards and some boards. Anyway.
You would think the whole idea of it's a scam would have been negated by the fact that an executive order was just signed by the government. Have you seen a change since that executive order as was signed, maybe in the, feelings of people towards Bitcoin, or has it just been too soon to really gauge that effect?
You're seeing parts of you're seeing a change, and I think there's still in the large business community, this like view of, like there was a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but it was Trump, right? And I think that like that, I completely disagree with that framework, and I always view, whether it's Trump or anyone, but look at the merits thing on the argument of the merits, not the individual that says it. Whether you love the individual or hate the individual,
look at the group he surrounded himself by too. That's
billionaires, right? Businessmen, right? And I do think it's going to change things. I think that the complete de-risking from a regulation perspective of Bitcoin being banned in America is, if you were to say before the election, what was the biggest risk to Bitcoin? It was it being banned, and all these individuals that would talk about how great blockchain technology is, but not Bitcoin. Like I think the most common corporate speak that you've seen over the last prior to the ETS over the last several years, and I think that's changing, and it will change, and but it's just it takes time. Institutions will move. They move typically with the consensus. So when it's consensus and you have a handful of pensions that have done it, I think more will move. With corporate treasuries, I think my view is that almost every single public company should own Bitcoin. I think there's this unique opportunity in time right now where any company that wants to can. The capital markets will allow it. In the future, that may not be the case. Not that they shouldn't own Bitcoin, but that they may not be able to do it, and because it's a scarce asset, and the ability to lend or issue new shares and raise dollars to buy Bitcoin, that's a luxury, and it's a luxury for companies that do it. And we're still very early in adoption there, and I think that all these companies that do it today are going to be long run powerhouses with a massive amount of capital in an era of massive disruption, and I'm very bullish on their long-term prospects. But I think all 500 companies should own Bitcoin. I actually don't even know if the company 500 and the S&P 500, when they want to do it, if they'll be able to do it in any material way. Just like how before this Bitcoin treasury
ran, but up to a point at that point where it will be out of use.
Yeah, well, I mean, like typically, like it's not that companies can typically just accumulate a massive amount of capital. Forget the word Bitcoin. Like that's not an environment that always exists, right? And it exists right now, and in a period with heightened risk, like people should be running towards this, in our view. And so, anyways,
and is Strive kind of led by example with the company itself? Do you guys hold Bitcoin on your balance sheet?
Working on it.
Okay,
working on it. I'm a big believer in practicing what we preach, and from my view, as a company, there's, we always have to put our clients first. We have a fiduciary duty to them, like as an asset manager, as a wealth manager. So that's like our number one focus for our company. That's number one focus. Yeah, I feel massively short Bitcoin, and working on it.
Just to end it out, I don't know how much you could say, but like that transition for Vivek between Doge and then doing the Ohio governor race, how has that been, and how has that affected Strive's, the company as a whole? Is he still involved, or is he basically completely separated now?
So Vivek and I speak every single day.
Oh, that's okay.
He's not involved with Strive in an official capacity, but he's obviously a major shareholder of our company.
Sure.
And just a personal mentor. He founded the company, so he's heavily involved in the strategy of the company. I mean, he's a business guy, and so until he's the next governor of Ohio, and I mean that's looking extremely promising for him. But until he's in, he's a businessman that's running for office. He's not in office, right? And so he's heavily involved. As far as the transition, I mean, he was always, since he's joined that, planning on running for governor or thinking about running for governor. And so I think it just happened maybe a little bit sooner, and I think that was part of how Doge was assembled. That was different than how it was initially assembled. But I mean, he's already got the endorsements of Elon. He's got the endorsement of Trump. I mean, he's basically, I'm not sure a major person that he doesn't have the endorsement from, but I mean, it's at least in the primary, it's like kind of looking like a not really a race. But
he had my vote. I loved him when he was running for it, and he's still so young. I'm sure he'll get another guy.
I mean, the guy's got a bright future.
Yeah.
Whatever he decides to do, I wouldn't be short. Yeah.
Well, tell these guys where they can find you if you're on Twitter or anything like that.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Cole Macro, ColeMacro, and then Strive is on Twitter at Strive Funds, and then our corporate website strive.com.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Yeah. Well.